the day when we had the time, we took a walk in the battlefield with an operatic dog on the line. I followed you through the grassland, took a photo while I held your hand. We walked along the woods near the place where the water was so clear, and it was clear that all our words, that all our words, that all our words could combine, given time. When we were in Virginia, on a day when we had some time, we took a walk up a mountain with an old man's face in the stone. He followed me up to the pinnacle, took a photo with the wind in our hair. We walked atop the ridge near the rock where we laid and breathed the air, and it was clear that all our worlds, that all our worlds, that all our worlds should combine, and it was time for all our worlds, for all our worlds, for all our worlds to combine, and it was time.
There we go. That's better, isn't it? You can hear me. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This program is part of the American Center and Moscow's weekly speaker series continuing throughout 2026, the 50 states. We invite you to join us next Wednesday, April 29th at 8 p.m. Moscow time for the next event in the series, which will be on the state of New York. Excelsior. But meantime, we're going to dive into the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm Harry Kolatch Jr., a lifelong resident of Richmond, the state's capital, and for Richmond Magazine, the senior writer, which makes me sound older than I wish I was and wiser than I am. I've written a few books and started a couple theaters. If you find me curious enough to be curious about, you can check the links that I believe are going to be in the chat. So we have about 400 years to cover in 48 minutes or so, so I'm going to get started with that. Let me just give this remark. To be a Virginian, either by birth, marriage, adoption, or even on one's mother's side, is an introduction to any state in the Union, a passport to any foreign country, and a benediction from above. That's the Virginia Creed, the origin of which is unclear, but you can find it in needlepoint at some touristy shops throughout the Commonwealth. This is a precious sentiment, but within it is an acknowledgement of Virginia's lore and historical mystique. In Richmond-born Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Ellen Glasgow's 1909 The Romance of a Plain Man, an older character reminisces about a teacher in the one-room school he attended. Taught us English history, and then Virginia history. As for the rest of America, she used to say it didn't have a history, merely a past. Mentioned the Boston Tea Party by mistake once, and had to explain that that was an incident, not history. Many of you have an acquaintance with Richmond and Virginia through its tobacco products, as in Philip Morris, or by aspects of history like Captain John Smith and Pocahontas and Chief Powhatan and John Rolfe, whom we'll all get to in due course. And then also Patrick Henry and his Liberty or Death speech that it helped ignite the revolution in Virginia and helped us to lead the way. Or John Marshall, who the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who pioneered constitutional law and became an early Richmond, Washington commuter and built his house here. Or General George Marshall, who earned the Nobel Peace Prize for leading the reconstruction of post-World War II Europe with the Marshall Plan, as a place where the enslaved rebelled, as with Gabriel here in Richmond in August of 1800, and Nat Turner in Southampton County during August 1831, a crucible of the Civil War here in Richmond, or parts of Richmond. The business district is on fire due to the Confederate evacuation. And it's also the birthplaces from Portsmouth, also, civil rights. This is our civil rights monument, from the Civil War to civil rights, our civil rights monument in Capitol Square. It seemed like reaching for the moon, said Barbara Johns, who broke the color barrier in terms of attending public school here. But it's also the birthplace in Portsmouth of Missy Elliott, the late, great D'Angelo, and from Virginia Beach, Pharrell Williams. And if you're in a room without a roof, could that be drafty, maybe a little damp? Maybe you wouldn't be that happy of a feeling unless you wore a big hat like this, right? It's by Ignatius, who is a hat maker from Virginia. This is also the place which nurtured Edgar Allan Poe through success and tragedy and made him a professional writer. He wrote like his life depended on it, because it did. And then Vince Gilligan, my schoolmate, sort of. We went to the same high school. He was behind me. But he he was one of the writers of the X-Files, created Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and lately Pluribus. Richmond is also Virginia is where the first electric-powered streetcars rolled, where A.P. Carter with Mother Maybelle and the Carter sisters blended folk, gospel, and bluegrass into what we call country. And that's holding the mandolin there is June Carter, who later married a fellow named Johnny Cash. So that's who you might know who she is. And then, of course, GWAR happened. Grammy Award winning. But now, let's meet Virginia. The state's picked up some nicknames along the way. There's the mother of presidents. 8 men, pictured here, rose to lead the country, some better at it than others. George Washington, whom you know most likely, Thomas Jefferson, whose Virginia statute for religious freedom spelled out tolerance for those of different faiths or none, and said that it didn't matter whether you had a faith or whatever it was to run for public office. James Monroe, whose doctrine outlining that Europe shouldn't be over here and we shouldn't be over there has been pulled like taffy for every successor. James, father of the Constitution, Madison, His wife, Dolly, who with the help, well, that's his wife, Dolly, who with the assistance of teenage slave footman Paul Jennings and others, prevented Gilbert Stuart's 8-foot-long Washington portrait from getting burned by the British in 1814 when they invaded. And old Zachary Taylor, old rough and ready. And then Woodrow Wilson, that's not him, and Woodrow Wilson, well, no, I'm getting things confused now. Two grandsons. There's John Tyler there. He's standing on the far left. Two grandsons, not great-grandsons, of John Tyler, the nation's 10th president, born in 1790 when George Washington was in office. Two of his grandsons lived into the 21st century. He married a younger woman twice. And Woodrow Wilson over there, second from right. He wanted to make the world safe for democracy when we weren't fully practicing it here ourselves, especially in regard to the civil liberties of women and people of color. Virginia is also the mother of states. At its colonial height, Virginia's land claims stretched westward to the Mississippi River and beyond. The fluid original boundaries embraced Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. These claims were ceded amid the national formation and the compromise to get the Constitution passed. Virginia, you had to surrender some land. The renowned, here we go, frontiersman Daniel Boone, yep, that Daniel Boone, served 3 terms in the Virginia legislature, but he kept missing votes because he was out hunting, and the sergeant at arms had to go and drag him back to the chamber to fulfill his obligations. Boone played a significant role in the formation of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, formed from the far western Virginia counties. We'll get to the whole Commonwealth thing here in a minute. While here, though, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the portions of these lands were traveled by the Thomas Jefferson mandated Corps of Discovery, an expedition following the Louisiana Purchase led by Virginians Meriwether Lewis and George Rogers Clark. Sacagawea, not from Virginia, but she served as their guide and translator from St. Louis to the Pacific coast. She endured the same hardships as those 31 men while nursing and tending for an infant son. Then comes West Virginia. The residents and their representatives got fed up with Eastern Virginia prior to the Civil War, but due in part to the long distance required to cast votes in Richmond, but also because they weren't as invested in the slave-based economy. This led one newspaper editorial to proclaim that the only thing they could expect from Richmond was taxes and treason. Thus, in 1863, amid a war about slavery and secession, the far western counties of Virginia went their own way. And that's a whole nother story. The present configuration makes the Commonwealth of Virginia the 35th largest state in the Union, with 8.9 million people, and the 12th most populous state. Some 1.16 million of them are foreign born, but they're all Virginians now. As Virginian George Washington stated in 1783, the bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respectable stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions. Our present governor, Abigail Spanberger, the first woman to hold that office, in her inaugural speech, pictured here, asked the audience the difference between Commonwealth and state. The answer, none. As for me, the phrase looks better on official proclamations, you got to admit. The Commonwealth term is reflected in the states that provided fighters, brains, and materiel to the Revolution, Massachusetts and Pennsylvania, as I'm sure they've reminded you in these presentations. If they haven't spoken yet, they will bring it up. Kentucky honored its mother by taking the name/title. Then, too, the term goes back to the Commonwealth of England, the brief and fraught republic set up following the 17th century English Civil War. our states intended to last longer than the 11 years of the English one, and our states were kind of bigger than their Commonwealth. So we're also known for our state seal and motto, created in 1776 by this fellow, George Wythe, the nation's first law professor who taught at the College of William and Mary, mentor to Thomas Jefferson and John Marshall, and a signer of the Declaration of Independence, is credited with devising the seal. And there she is. The motto, recent scholarship contends, came from Wythe translating, follow this, it came from Wythe translating a Greek line from Homer as quoted in Plutarch into Latin. And he kind of shortened it. Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants. The archetypal Roman figure, Virtu, shown as an Amazon, her foot resting on a slain despot. The image resembles a scene from the 2019 Jessica Jones episode, shown humiliating a murderous wrestling coach. How clever of them. Somebody did their research. By the way, George Wythe, who lived a long time, ended up getting poisoned by his grandnephew, but he lived longer. He lingered enough to testify against him. So that's a rather curious story and worthy of Jessica Jones. To understand Virginia and how it got this way, though, we should look at geography, because here the land drives the story. In the east, the Chesapeake Bay, the largest estuary in the county and the country, and an immense driver of ecology and economy, formed about 35 million years ago from the impact of an asteroid from 1 to 3 miles wide, crashing near the present town of Cape Charles. Lovely place, great sunsets, go if you can. The event churned up a tsunami with waves thousands of feet high. If you've ever seen Interstellar, the water planet, like that. The crater is still under the bay. An earlier deep impact helped kill off the dinosaurs. This one wiped out plants and mammals. The waters flowed in from melting glaciers down the Susquehanna River. Today, the bay, around which some 18 million people live, is in a challenging dynamic of recreation, preservation, and commercialization. On Virginia's western shoulder is our famed Blue Ridge, the mountains. And I want to get back to that. These are, well, the erosion took its toll, rounding the mountains down, but they were part of the ancient or the prehistoric mountain range in Pangaea. Parts of those mountains, when the continent broke up, parts of those mountains ended up as the Watkins Range in Greenland, the Atlas Range in Morocco, the Scottish Highlands, and the Caledonian Mountains of Scandinavia. So some bits of Virginia are all over the place. Erosion took its toll, rounding the mountains down. And in the 18th and 19th centuries, when the Irish, Scottish, and German immigrants came through the Shenandoah Valley, they looked around and said, this looks like home, and they settled. Remnants of the prehistoric ranges can be found in places like Natural Bridge, pictured here. That's a 215-foot limestone gorge that was part of a cave roof that collapsed due to the force of water coming through it. And Luray Caverns, known for their stalagmites and stalactites and the great stalagpipe organ. It's incredible. Now, during Henry Miller's, well, we won't get to Doug Wilder yet. During Henry Miller's 1939 Proto-Kerouacian journey through the United States, he noted, the person who spoke the finest English was a guide in the Massanutten caves of Virginia. Now, she must have spoken in an Upper Tidewater accent that makes everything sound as though it comes from some sort of scripture. This distinctive Virginia dialect has nearly died out. One prominent figure who possesses that voice, there's Doug again, in mannerism is L. Douglas Wilder, a grandson of slaves who grew up in segregated Richmond to become the first Black governor in the United States. You can hear traces of that sort of dialect or accent in mountain towns and a variation on the remote Chesapeake Bay island of Tangier. Generations separated from the mainland caused a mixture of colonial-era brogue and Virginia Tidewater drawl. Tangier, however, is in a struggle against rising sea levels. Along the rivers and tributaries of Virginia, the Potomac, the Chickahominy, Mattaponi, and Appomattox evolved a culture of farming, eventually the Tidewater plantation system. And the names of these rivers all come from Native American words or tribes. But Virginia began as a commercial enterprise. The London-based Virginia Company sent people here to exploit what they found and find a shortcut to the East Indies. The colony instead nearly collapsed through famine, disease, internal conflict, and often violent encounters with the indigenous peoples. Richmond became a primary center of trade. When John Smith and 24 others in May 1607 came from Jamestown on what they called the James River, they encountered rocks and rapids that prevented further westward movement. This is the fall line, the transition zone between the upland Piedmont and the low-lying coastal plain. And to get around the rapids, one of George Washington's big ideas involved building a parallel canal to transport goods from the Chesapeake Bay to the Ohio River Valley. The James River and Kanawha Canal made Richmond a bustling commercial hub. And the truckers of the water, the bateau operators, the men who poled the boats through the canal, were frequently slave and free blacks. The canal reached its 197.5-mile length prior to the Civil War and was at its busiest before the war's destruction and the dominance of railroads made it obsolete. Now we arrive at the James River today, which offers Class 4 rapids for the experienced paddlers right in the middle of town, and a rocky landscape suitable for fishing, sunbathing, and artistic interpretation. Back in 1607, the paramount chief and spiritual leader, Powhatan, who led a confederation of tribes, gained some from détente with the new arrivals. They needed his corn to survive, and he wanted their copper because it had a value to them. Whether Powhatan thought the newcomers could be restricted to Jamestown or they'd eventually succumb to disease isn't clear, but he thought he could get along with them politically. He didn't realize how many of them were going to eventually show up. Then in 1613, on what was supposed to be a visit among friends, one of his many children, Pocahontas, was kidnapped and held captive in Henricus, a kind of Jamestown suburb. There she underwent socio-religious indoctrination and her name changed to Rebecca. There, Pocahontas met John Rolfe, a widower. They wed in 1614. This is an extremely fanciful description or depiction of their marriage. But during that time, the two cultures were united and for a brief time at peace. Their son, John Rolfe, and Pocahontas' son, Thomas, born in 1615, was the first recorded offspring of an indigenous person and a European in Virginia. During a tour of England organized by the Virginia Company to show off the Christianized savage, a living metaphor for colonization conversion, Pocahontas died of a disease for which she had no immunity. Virginia's socioeconomic survival came through tobacco cultivation by Rolfe. He combined seeds he got from Bermuda with the native Virginia variety and made it palatable as a form of tobacco, and his Varina hybrid helped save Virginia. Tobacco wealth expanded rapidly, but in order to produce it, so did slavery. In 1619, the first Africans arrived in Jamestown due to their capture from a hijacked Portuguese slave ship. John Rolfe bought some 20 of them. The General Assembly, the Virginia legislature, formed and is considered the oldest deliberative body in North America, though some think that they still can't get it right. And 147 women joined Jamestown's male settlers, giving the colony permanency. These 1619 events made Virginia both a cradle of liberty and a foundation of inequality, which we've struggled with ever since. Following Powhatan's death, Opekan Canoe rose to leadership. In an effort to dislodge the Europeans, he organized two separate mass attacks, and in 1622 and 1644, the 1622 Good Friday assault killed up to a third of the population. Now, rather than scare off the Europeans, the British Crown revoked the Virginia Company's charter and made the colony immediately subservient to the king. This put in motion Virginia's eventual central role in the Revolution. And this depiction, again, is rather fanciful, but the sort of covers the Powhatan Wars of Virginia. Ultimately, following years of repression and legal restrictions, some reservations formed for Virginia's native peoples, the Pamunkey and Mattaponi, while the Chickahominy and Rappahannock tribal lands were purchased. Many of them are still there. The state recognizes them, however, in the eastern band of the Chickahominy, the Nansemond, the upper Mattaponi, and the Monacan. The Chernahaka and the Powtomic have also gained state recognition. So not only are they named in our rivers, but they are living here among us. The dynamic between freedom and bondage erupted into the Civil War. Virginia twice voted against secession until the guns fired on Fort Sumter, and that decided the issue. More battles were fought in Virginia than any other state. On April 3rd, 1865, retreating Confederates set fire to Richmond's military warehouses, but winds fanned the flames that consumed the business district, burning every bank and bar. The next day, President Abraham Lincoln, with his son Tad, arrived with a small group of Marines to see the city that until then was for him a frustratingly distant name on a map. And there he was, walking among the smoldering ruins, unbelieving and quite emotionally moved. But by the next year, 16 brewers and distilleries were in operation. Rebuilding works up a thirst. The tradition continues today statewide with independent breweries. Governor Thomas Jefferson moved the capital from Williamsburg to Richmond in 1780. He designed the State House as a classical temple, not to a god, but capital D, democracy. And where in ancient times a big statue to Apollo might have stood, is instead Jean-Antoine Houdon, marble statue of George Washington. The face was made from a life cast, and one of his waistcoat buttons is purposely missing. The work is one of the most important in the country. Houdon originally wanted the statue to be at eye level, but James Madison wrote the text for the pedestal and the General Assembly appropriated the funds, so you do still have to look up to him. The Virginia Capitol building itself is a declaration of lofty ideals that we as a state and nation have spent the past 250 years trying to meet. Virginia struggled through segregation and resistance to change. Today, the Commonwealth is a center of government, culture, technology, and education. Several respected Virginia's forever. Look at that. Several respected state-supported universities are part of Virginia's intellectual and innovative heritage. The College of William and Mary, founded in 1693, the University of Virginia, another of Thomas Jefferson's ideas in 1819, Virginia Tech, 1872, and Virginia Commonwealth University, with its medical roots going back to 1838. Among premier private institutions, the University of Richmond, a home of our host Forum for Cultural Engagement, traces its roots to 1830. And Virginia reaches for the stars. The Langley Research Center in Hampton is NASA's oldest field center, started in 1917 with experimentation in aviation and on the forefront of spaceflight innovation, while the Wallops Island Flight Facility on the eastern shore launches into the upper atmospheres satellites for weather testing and experimental pilotless aircraft. Virginia, as always, boldly goes. Thank you. Now I see there we have a question. Where does the phrase Virginia is for lovers come from? Well, that was it was actually considered risque when it was first proposed by a Virginia advertising executive, and back in 1972, 70, somewhere in there, and but it stuck, and it's been much copied, and it's promoted. It's on T-shirts, it's on mugs, it's everywhere, and I think with legislation and so forth that Virginia indeed is for lovers, and can be. Strolling on our beaches, climbing our mountains, and just enjoying the luscious, lovely landscape and the cultural arts which are prevalent here. My second question is, how would you describe Virginia to someone who's never been there? Well, I think I just did, but I wouldn't want to talk for 45 minutes. Well, Virginia is where it all begins. You can't have the United States without Virginia. That's the historical part of it. Everything that's ever happened that mattered happened here, from revolution, slavery, freedom, technological innovation that's changed the world. But also we like to have a good time. we love music and performance. I live in Richmond, and so I'm very fortunate to be around theater and music venues that are extraordinarily high, world class in my view. Not just my view, but the critics think so too. So that's how I might try to explain it. It's difficult because I'm a lifer. I've never lived anywhere else for any significant length of time. And I've been able to travel, very fortunate to do that. And wondered why Richmond doesn't do certain things that other towns do. But, the grass is always greener, right? So what is my favorite part of living in Virginia? I think my favorite part is there's a kind of ease of living here. People get along mostly, and it's just a gorgeous state. I mean, 1 hour from here is the Rappahannock River, another hour in the west are the mountains. I'm living in Central Virginia, so I'm really surprised the more I travel throughout the state, just how much variety there is, and it's really worth exploring. I think that's one part that I really enjoy. I like going to places that I've not been, and there are a number of them. What makes Virginia's culture distinct compared to other southern states? Ooh, that's a good one. Well, I think besides the fact that we joined the Civil War kind of late, and then had many battles fought here. I think what's distinct among us now is that I think we've been somewhat forward and progressive than some of our neighbors. I mean, it took a great struggle to do that, to get to where we are. And we did have a third party, the Readjuster Party, in the early 1880s, that was a black and white party. It was the most successful third party, some have said, in the history of the United States, and certainly one of the most progressive, at least for the 19th century. That all came to an unfortunate end. The problem with one of the problems with the Readjusters was that they basically got everything they wanted and they didn't know what to do next. They had the governor, they controlled the legislature and the courts, and they were not going to give everybody the vote. They weren't about that. They were they were about male franchise basically. But eventually that changed, and now we have Abigail Spanberger as our governor. So I think that says something about us. What do people like to do for fun in Virginia? Does it depend on the region? It does depend on the region. I think here in Central Virginia, the rivers, and they're plural, the James particularly, offers all kinds of trails. That we have the James River Park system here, which is an amazing thing. It's the jewel of the region. And there's hiking trails, the Class 4 rapids, which I'm too chicken to take, but people do it. That way they train the guides, but it's also flat water, and that's just lovely to be out there at sunset in your kayak and just taking it all in, listening to the woods buzzing and humming with the creatures that live there. And you're only you're right outside of downtown. It's pretty amazing. And I think, there's music. Like I said, there's the Carter family fold in the southwest tip of Virginia, where the Carter family established themselves, and people go down and listen. We have the dialects, the Fiddle Festival. We also have Wolf Trap, where up in Northern Virginia, which hosts incredible international acts, and there's always boating, all in the Chesapeake Bay, boating and fishing for the sports inclined. Where would you like to visit in Virginia that you haven't been to yet? Wow. You know what? I've never been in the caverns. I've seen pictures of them. I've never been underground, and not like that. Not in the caverns or the caves. There's plenty of above land to see too. I haven't really explored the Grayson Highlands, which is in the upper end of the Shenandoah Valley. I'd like to do some more of that. And those are the two places that I can think of. Fredericksburg is a really lovely town right on the Rappahannock, and I'd like to spend more time there. What foods or regional specialties are uniquely associated with Virginia? Well, pickles. One of our early women, female entrepreneurs, devised pin money pickles. It was one of these stories where she started in her basement in Church Hill, and eventually there was a manufacturing center in Church Hill, excuse me, in Carver. She gradually moved west. Pimento cheese is a big thing. Barbecue. Now we have a ongoing fight with North Carolina about our barbecue. Those are the three right on the top of my head that are. And peanuts. Oh God, I can't forget those. George Washington Carver and this is Suffolk and Surrey. The peanuts were an enormous benefit to the Virginia economy, and also in the 19th century. We exported more flour to the world than anybody else. We've since after the Civil War that ended, but we supplied flour to the 49ers, the 1849, the gold miners in California. Virginia's right next to Washington, D.C. We really are. Actually, kind of straddles us. How much does that proximity shape daily life and culture in the state? That's a good question. I think it just depends on the person or the group. We do feel it more acutely, I think, the decisions made there, because it just seems like it's right up the street. It kind of is. It's about 2 hours from here, north of here. And we certainly feel the seismic waves of decisions made there. And people follow politics here pretty closely. A number of people do. So it's important. It's part of us. And of course, the District of Columbia is itself. They're very famous for that, the fact that they have no representation in Congress. And so that's their license plate, no taxation without representation. Very famous line. Question 9. What are the main differences in the Virginia language, dialect, or words in comparison with the standard American English language? Oh my. What are the typical pronunciation issues in Virginia language for non-speaking native English? Well, let's see how to unpack this. One of the things is we have many loaner words from the Algonquin language that the Indians spoke. Pecan, moccasin, Roanoke, which was a tubular sort of grassy weed, not a weed, but it was something they ate. Canoe, and wow. So every time yes, this is a cool one. So of course we're hearing these words pronounced or written by the English, who are doing them sort of phonetically, and the Indians expressed surprise or amazement with a word they spelled as W-A-U-G-H, wah, which we say is wow. And so when you press the wow button on Facebook, you're using a word about 10,000 years old, at least, because the natives, native Powhatan, or the native Indians here, the indigenous people here use that word. In the terms of the Virginia, the dialect that I was trying to imitate, and which unfortunately I don't really have much of. Maybe you think I do. Other people don't. Rhotic R's, the final R, like tempa. Mind your temper. That's one thing that kind of distinguishes us. Other than that, we try to speak the native, the King's English, so to speak. Question 10, is there a local tradition or seasonal event in Virginia that brings the whole community together? Well, I can tell you that in Richmond, we have a couple. We have an enormous Halloween parade through Oregon Hill that was organized by the All the Saints Theater. They do puppetry, very politically oriented, but I mean, it's amazing. Hundreds of people, all dressed up, and we march through Oregon Hill. In Richmond, we have a zombie parade. It's been going on for 20 years. So has the Oregon Hill All the Saints Halloween parade. We also have a celebration on our Monument Avenue, which doesn't have really the monuments. It has the Arthur Ashe statue still. Easter on Parade. And those are three. But there's the Winchester, the Apple Festival. There is a regular festivals in Hampton Roads along the Chesapeake Bay. There are big festivals all over the state. Some of them are just around something that's grown in the region, or they're for a person or a celebration just for the season. And I think that's where many of them come from. Is there a Virginia slang word or expression that would be completely confuse someone from another state? Well, I think that depends on what we're saying. My grandmother, my county would have, my county relatives would have words that might befuddle just because of their accents. And I think that let's see here, slang word. Gonna get around to it. Gonna fixing to do something. There we go. I'm gonna fix to get around to what it means. I'm fixing to do that. I'm gonna get around to doing that eventually. That might be one. That's just off the top of my head. I guess because I speak it, I don't necessarily think about it that much. But Virginia peanuts are supposed to be some of the best in the country. They are, because they're from Virginia. Is that something locals actually talk about, or is it more of an export thing? Well, you can get peanuts here everywhere, and I think people just love them. Of course, now people have allergies, so I have to, my spouse, Amy, AMIE, the artist Amy Oliver, she can't eat peanuts, so I have to buy big mixed nuts without them. But I like peanuts, and so it's a big deal. It was an economic driver, particularly after we still have tobacco farms, but they're very tobacco is very taxing on the nutrients of the land, and peanuts were one way to get around that. But yes, they are a big export for us. Virginia peanuts are a big deal. Could you briefly explain how Virginia's taxes compare to those of other states, particularly in areas like alcohol, property, real estate, and income taxes? Wow, that's illegal. That's a tax question, isn't it? Yeah, it has tax right in there. Well, we do have all those things, and the taxation situation is one that's frequently debated. We have sales tax here in Richmond. Actually, we have the alcohol. Restaurants have the beverage tax, food and beverage tax, which was actually implemented to help support one of our cultural centers 20 years ago, and still is on the books. And we have an admissions tax for ticketed events that was actually put on the books to make money for war bonds during the Second World War. The problem with that is that if you take the tax away, the money has to come from somewhere. So, you go up and down. There was a big debate about car taxes that got struck down. So there are unique taxes to us in that regard. I hope I answered that question. It's a little bit out of my field. I'm standing out of my field. What are the most important historical sites in Virginia? Oh, well, gosh, there are many. First of all, I would start with the Virginia State House, the Capitol, because that's where it all kind of starts in terms of the leadership. But Jamestown, which is 1607, that's where it starts, and it's a ruin now. There's not much left. Williamsburg, of course, which was the colonial capital, which Jefferson moved us out of, and then Charlottesville, which is where Jefferson lived, just outside of on the mountaintop there. Arlington Cemetery, the military cemetery just outside of D.C., is a remarkable, sobering, worthwhile visit. I think that the battlefields, if you're the Richmond National Battlefield Parks, there are Civil War battlefields and Revolutionary War battlefields, I might add, all dot the state. So visiting some of those, I think, would be impressive to people. So I think that's a start anyway. We have an incredible array of museums and cultural centers that are definitely worth visiting. And I think that might be something to consider. Is Virginia Beach a popular place to visit? Yes, it is. It remains so. And people do go there, particularly spring breakers. It's a bit bustly and commercial for me, but some people love that, particularly who have less gray hair than me. How do people in Virginia spend their summers? Is it all about the beach, or are there other traditions? Yes, staying cool. My goodness, it's hot in here. It's very Tennessee wind, very sweaty clavicles. Yeah, no, spend their summer. I mean, the rivers, again, getting out into the water at Virginia Beach or on the rivers around us, and outdoor activities, camping and hiking and that kind of thing. Yeah, you take your deep woods off because we are a very buggy state, particularly in the summer. Yeah, you can beware of the mosquitoes, very bad in the low-lying areas. But yeah, summer is a time for being outdoors. Also, if we're trying to stay cool, that's why we have museums. That's a lot of times people go there when it gets really hot. If you could sit someone down at one restaurant table in Richmond, oh no, and say, this is Virginia, where would it be and what would they eat? Y'all are going to get me in trouble. Okay. For the high-end sort of thing, there's a place not that far from here called La Possum, L-O-Possum, named after our favorite animal here, the possum. And the food, I mean, is incredible. I'm not going to pick a dish. Not going to pick a dish because they're all great. But right around the corner from me is the Bamboo Cafe. It's been in business for 50 years. And it's a little bitty corner restaurant, the kind that just don't exist in cities that often anymore. And the sweet potato fries, that's what I would recommend because they're so good. We love them. So there you go, the opposite ends of the spectrum. What is the best season to visit Virginia? And where would you recommend a tourist visit first? Well, all these are good questions. I think people seem to like the early spring, April, May, before it gets too hot and before it gets too buggy. Although in Virginia, if you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. It's a true thing. This week alone, we've been 80 is the high, then 62, then we'll be back to follow the bouncing red ball kind of thing. Also early autumn, because the leaf peepers, that's when the Shenandoah Valley, which I showed the picture of, all those trees turn different colors. And around in Richmond too. I mean, and then when all the blossoms come out around the water, around the lakes and so forth, they're really quite astounding. But we also have pollen as the spring proceeds. That's why the fall is probably better in some cases. And what would you visit first? Well, you know what? Visiting Richmond, the Valentine Museum in Richmond. If you want to know about Richmond, it's a great introduction. And what happened? Oh. Something happened. Did our time run out? There we go. I blacked out. I'm sorry. I don't know. My computer blacked out. But I'm still here. Okay. Yes. Are the harsh winters in Virginia, are the winters harsh or are the weather pretty mild? Again, it depends. Like this past February, we had snow and then we had ice storms. And so the city was just blocked. We called it Snowcrete. And it was almost like back in pandemic days. We were like stranded in our house. I managed to slide away to the Bamboo and other places. But compared to places like the next one, New York, places up north, places you might be familiar with, the snow is never that bad. Our biggest snows have been like 24 inches, which really just drags, the whole city just stops. More, even less than that, 15 inches can really bring the city to a halt. But that doesn't happen very often. We have pretty mild winters, I would say. And in February, for some reason, in the middle of the month, you'll get 70 degrees and then it plummets down back to 30. So just kind of just check the weather before you leave the house. What's the relationship between Virginia and its neighbor, West Virginia? Do people feel a connection, or are they very different worlds? That's a good question too. West by God, Virginia, as they say. It's wild and woolly in Virginia. Also, it's a big coal country, big coal over there, and we have it in Southwest Virginia too. They are distinct cultures, and I think that was one reason why they separated, because they weren't tied to the tidewater economy. They were their own people, their own traditions. A lot of Irish, Welsh, Scots background, that whole Appalachian culture there, it's a splendid place in terms of natural resources. It's also been kind of damaged by mountaintop flattening for the coal and stuff. But yeah, I think for a long time after the Civil War, there was legislation. People tried to get West Virginia to pay us for the resources they took, and that didn't work out. But the West Virginia are very proud of their state, as well as they should be, and their culture there. It is an independent place. What's the hunting and fishing culture like in Virginia? Well, it's pretty well established. Is it a family tradition that gets passed down, or is it fading? Good question. Again, I think, well, particularly we had the tradition of fox hunting that was, came over from England. There is a hunting culture here. It is a family tradition, can be. I didn't pick it up. My dad was actually not from here. My mother was, but my dad was from Wisconsin. And so he didn't have any interest in hunting. But I have friends of mine who still do it. They go out when the seasons start, and it is something that people do participate in and particularly in the mountains in the western parts of the state. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried. What are the major industries in Virginia? Well, I was talking about our space technology centers. We're also getting the data centers here too. But I think the arts and culture aspect of the state too is very important. Our museums and our entertainment centers are particularly important. And agriculture. I mean, tobacco is still made here. We mentioned peanuts, and the Winchester apples. They're still around, and they're still producing. And I cannot go without the Hanover tomato. The Hanover tomato is world famous. They're so lush and big, and people love them. So those are one of the components of our economic culture. So there you go. Things you can grow and eat and go into space with. Are there any famous college rivalries in Virginia? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I think all of them, except for Virginia Commonwealth University, which has no football team. Yeah, we have, there's the U of R Spiders, the basketball team, which is extraordinarily popular. Virginia Tech has the Hokies and the Cavaliers of UVA, and they battle it out. Those are their football teams. Yes, there are very definitely intercollegial battles and preferences. What's the apple and cider scene like in Virginia? Is there an autumn tradition around it? Right here in Richmond, there is Buskey cider, Buskey cider, and it's made from Virginia apples with no sugar added. And I'm advertising it here. I'm not getting paid for it, but I do drink it. I love it because it's not beer. It's not as fattening, and there's less stuff in it than there is in beer. So yes, we do produce apples here, particularly in upstate, up in the Shenandoah Valley. Many apple orchards, and the Winchester. As I said, in Winchester, they have the apple. There's parades. It's a big tradition with apples there, I think autumn here. I think is for apples. I think that's there are traditions, of course, but it's not so much about apples. Final question: after everything we've talked about today, what's the one thing you hope people take away about Virginia? Well, that in fact we are one of the oldest Many of our stories start here, the good and the not so much, that we have struggled like the rest of the country to maintain the ideals of that temple of democracy that Jefferson built and the ideals that he put into the Declaration of Independence. And it is not an easy thing at all, because humans can be, just because you want them to be less venal and more gracious doesn't make them so. But we struggle. And I think that we have been successful in many respects. We need to do better than many others. But I think people should just understand that Virginia is gorgeous. You should visit, take us in, absorb us, learn from us. And I think that's what I would tell people, which I just did. So thank you all very much. I wanted to reemphasize that there is let me scroll down. I can't do that. Can I do that? I don't know. Thank you very much to the forum. Just remember, Wednesday, there will be another one of these, and they'll be talking about New York. So hope you will join us for that, or join them for that. Join us, them. And I really appreciate you. Yes, here we go. Thank you all for joining us this evening. The program is part of the American Center in Moscow's weekly speakers series, continuing throughout 2026, 50 states. We invite you to join us next Wednesday, April 29th at 8 p.m. Moscow time for the next event in the series, which will be on the state of New York. Excelsior. So there you go. Thank you very much for being here. I hope that I was somewhat coherent. Oh, by the way, the hat is by Ignatius. Oh, sorry. The hat is by Ignatius, who was a rather renowned hat maker for theater and movies and just regular people like me, but they're each unique. There's not one else like it. So thank you very much.